Hey guys, this is Pablo with Meditation Amsterdam. It's Friday today. It's sunny, and the Netherlands is turning from winter to spring, apparently. It feels pretty good. And today I thought about a topic that has been on my mind and which I voiced over during one of these small lectures that I was giving at my company. And it had to do with what we call the meaning of life or the purpose in life and all these kind of big questions, right? And it kind of, the thought occurred to me as I was preparing a deck for this talk. And I voiced it over, and I did so in a way that maybe I'll come back to in a moment. But what it was about was how when you start to go into what you could call spiritual or mind-body development, and you start to change not the content of your mind, but the very way in which your mind operates, and the very way in which it is more closely linked to the body and to its own operations and so on. Something interesting starts to happen, which is that the default way in which your mind feels, hence in which it feels to be you, starts to shift. It starts to take a very positive shift. And there's levels of this, right? In modern society, I think that many of us practice meditation and yoga or some of these disciplines mostly to dampen stress, right? So our whole objective is like, oh, I'm stressed all the time. I'm constantly worrying about this or that or the other. And if I start to do mind-body practices, then I'll feel less stress, right? That's sometimes the thinking behind this stuff. It's fairly unambitious, if you ask me. The lack of stress and mental clarity are in the Eastern traditions. They are preconditions or base level skills in order to come to higher realizations. Whereas we've made yoga into something that reduces our stress, or meditation is something so that we can dampen our stress. But that's the entry level. And so, but at any rate, that is the first level, right? Like, so you start to practice these things, you start to meditate, and hopefully you develop a mindfulness practice, or some Dzogchen or Zen meditation, or mindfulness-based meditation, or maybe focus-based on the breath, whatever it is. And then stress goes down, and then once stress goes down, mental clarity and sharpness and focus and equanimity and presence start to go up and up and up and up. And like I said, the very way in which your brain operates is different. It's not so much that it has new knowledge or new content put into it or new skills, but it is the frequency of the mind changes, right? And as you develop more and more, that frequency starts to reach levels in which big questions begin to get answers, right? And those big questions could be, what is the purpose of life? Or what is my purpose? And what is the meaning of all this, right? And what it made me realize is that our thinking mind believes that the answer to what is the meaning of life is a logical verbal answer. All right, so think about that for a moment. You believe that the answer to the question, what is the meaning of life, or what is the purpose of my life, has a verbal answer, and it translates into certain activities that you do. I have found myself in this painting career, or I have realized that taking care of my child is the meaning of my life, right? So it is attached to a certain external circumstance and a certain activity, right? Or no, I have realized that the meaning of life is to be kind, is to be kind, right? Blanket statement, to be kind. Now, all those things are they're not negative things by any means. I mean, if you found your calling in life with painting, or taking care of your child, or you know, you realize that being really kind is something, all power to you. Those are moves in the right direction, but they are not the source of the whole thing, right? Because they are still contingent on certain mental state or certain other person out there, or a certain activity that you perform in order to experience your higher self, so to speak. And I had touched upon this before, where I said that the purpose of life, or the journey of life, is one of refinement of consciousness, constant refinement of your consciousness, so you become more perceptive, so that your focus, your depth, your perception become ever more refined and rich. And something interesting starts to happen when you perceive things with utter focus and depth and equanimity. And here comes, is that perception itself, and the object, it merges with the object of perception, and it is utterly meaningful in itself, right? So it comes to the point where the very vibration of your mind, or your very state of consciousness, becomes meaning. It is meaning. And when this happens, you come to realize that the meaning of life doesn't have a verbal answer, and that the purpose of your life is not to engage on a certain particular activity, or to face challenges on an ongoing basis. Yeah, okay, so that, you know, there's something to be said about that for sure. Maybe it even deserves its own video. But that when your consciousness becomes refined enough, clear enough, and deep enough, everything is utterly meaningful. So you stop seeking meaning outside, because you realize that you are meaning. That meaning is meaning is embedded in the very beingness of you. Yeah. This can start to become incredibly vague and esoteric. I hope it's not doesn't feel like one of those blah blah videos. But if you take any activity in which your mind goes into flow understood as, you know, time, sense of time disappears, sense of selves disappear, you're utterly merged with the activity. You know, people experience that in various different situations, and they say that what is required to enter a state of flow is an activity that is so challenging that you are fully engaged, but not so much that you don't know how to do it. So you are in this edge of utter engagement, and you're right there. Well, guess what? That is not contingent on the specifics of the activity. It is entering that mode of mind that makes the state of flow possible. And it is that state of flow in which your sense of smaller self, or your ego, vanishes, and suddenly you come in direct contact with reality in an uninterrupted and deep way, and that is the answer to the meaning of life. So it's a mode of mind. It's a mode of consciousness that's utterly fulfilling. So and it would be natural for us to think that it's a certain activity, or that we need to come to a certain knowledge or a certain realization to attain the meaning of life, because those thoughts and those expectations and those questions about what is the meaning of life are coming from the thinking mind. So naturally, the thinking mind will propose a thought or an activity or a logical answer to that question that is posing, because to the thinking mind, everything is about thinking. So it thinks that the meaning of life is a certain thought or a certain activity of thought or mind-body action. It would naturally come to that conclusion, but your task is to step out of the thinking mind into the into pure consciousness, or the aware mind, so to speak, the meta awareness. And the meta awareness, I'm going to make a meta video one of these days, because it's another cool one. And to step from the highest vantage point that you can as the observer, or the knower, or knowing rather, and to look down on look down upon the thinking mind and observe it for what it is, which is just this ongoing blah blah process, right? Like my Tai Chi teacher says that the thinking mind makes thoughts just like your bowels make poop, right? This is just like, it's an ongoing process, and it just, stuff is coming out. But the vantage point of the knower, that's on another logical level, right? It's a vantage meta point from which things can be observed. As you become more meta, then the thinking mind is taken to be what it is, and you no longer start to look for answers in what the thinking mind proposes to be answers to situations, because its very operation creates the problems to begin with, right? So it creates division where there is none, and it creates contention where the meta mind or the observer mind is more holistic in its way of operation. So instead of being a knife that slashes things into logical categories and then wonders why they're broken, the meta mind it's integrative, so that it sees the whole picture, and it harmonizes, and it brings things together. And that bringing together of things, that is when the more togetherness there is in the different parts of yourself and your mind, through the use of aware consciousness, the more harmonious the mind system operates, and that feels meaningful. It just feels meaningful in and of itself. That it gives you the answer to the meaning of life. If you either when you feel that, you don't even bother to ask the question, because it's obvious that you are the meaning of life, right? That's it. It's done. It's done. It resolves into itself, so to speak. Now, of course, then the question becomes, well, isn't it to say that the meaning of life is to struggle and to develop and grow? And this is true as well. But there's a caveat to that as well, which is to say that what the struggle really is about, again, is harmonizing and integrating with things. In other words, the journey is one in which you go around feeling like a separate entity, and then seeing something that is apparently out there, right? Which in reality is in your own mind. But you see it as an entity out there that poses threat to you and that unsettles your system. So now you have a sense of dis-ease in your mind and body, because you have perceived something that threatens your sense of safety, and you've made it another, right? So it's that versus me. And so now your challenge has been laid out for you. But see, what we try to do with these things when we are in mental mode, in thinking, doing mode, is we want to conquer that. So that we want to overwhelm that situation externally by doing tactical and strategic things, so that we change it to our liking, and therefore we don't have to worry about it anymore, right? Like, that would be normal approach. That is being smart. You could even call it being intelligent. But wisdom is about something else. Wisdom is about saying, this situation is making me uneasy. I feel a sense of dis-ease in my mind and body. I'm stressed. I'm contracted. Somewhere here, typically in the throat or in the chest or in your stomach, somewhere here in this area at the front of your body, you'll feel this, or sometimes here as well, of course, or here. There's a sense of, you're contracting. And again, to the person who's smart or clever, or using mental intelligence, this will be a sign that you need to jump into action to resolve a problem. Okay, that would be response on that level. Now, you don't have to discard that response. It's not to say that response is incorrect. The question is, where is that action coming from? So the wisdom level of this is to say, okay, this situation has stressed me out. That is an indication that I am seeing it incorrectly, in the sense that maybe it is an unpleasant situation or whatever, but it is me who is adding the psychological constriction component to that. So this is an indication to me that there is a situation in my mind with which I need to harmonize. So first I need to accept reality fully as it is and apply release. And then harmonize, and with my conscious awareness I will observe, the response in my mind and body, and then ask even a further higher question, which is, who is the perceiver of that stress? Because the ego is an invented entity. It's a bundling up of things that poses as a person that you then start to defend, but it doesn't really exist. And when you ask, what is it that is observing that stress, you realize that the observer of that stress is not stress in itself, and that is your higher self, in which there is full peace, there is no time, and it's totally, unaffected by this stuff. And you go, okay, from this place of safety, from this place of total assurance, total harmony with what is, I will now decide which action I want to take. And I might still take the very same action, but the quality of it will be completely different. And that is wisdom. Wisdom is integrative. Wisdom seeks to realize, to deeply and intuitively know that there is in fact no separation between the apparent situation that stresses me out and the stress and the ego that pretends to exist and feel stressed, and the self that perceives all those three, right? All that chain of situation, reaction, ego who feels stressed about the reaction, selves who observes the ego and the reaction and the situation. It's one thing. It is a single thing. It is all in consciousness. And so you start to use that knowledge or that understanding to integrate situation, response, knower, knowing. All a single thing that creates flow. And so, so this is by no means an invitation no longer to take action and no longer to pursue the meaning of life through things that you find engaging and to, to seek out situations that are challenging and to really resolve them. But you won't resolve them through grit and sheer, like clenching your teeth and determination. That's a very finite resource. It's not a very intelligent thing. And by resolving them that way, you haven't really resolved them. You've punched them away. You are punching things away from your life. You're like, this is something I really don't like, so I'm gonna, right? So yesterday I was listening to this motivational speaker who had one a few points that he wished his dad would have told him, and he said, make sure you make fuck you levels of money. And I thought, that sounds on the face of it like a great idea. It sounds like utter independence. But something in me felt, I felt my energy was sinking while I was listening to that. And I was like, well, this guy is giving go-getter advice. Is it that I feel threatened by that because I'm not going out there and getting it enough? And I'm just, doing my job well and stuff like that, but not, being massively aggressive or ambitious? Or is it the fact that somewhere in the back of it, I also, it could be that. It could be both things, right? Like maybe there's something there for me to learn. Yeah, go out there and get some, some proper independence and so on. Fine. But there's also a level of me that thinks, wait, why do you need fuck you levels of money? And the answer that I came up with it while thinking about it is, it's because you don't have fuck you levels of mind, right? Think about that also for a moment. It's, if you have fuck you levels of mental fluidness and solidity, right? If you have levels of mind on which you have bedrock, which is immovable, and from which you can explore the world freely, and there's things, situations and things don't vex you anymore. Maybe out of that you'll make fuck you levels of money. Maybe you won't, but that is real. That is a real asset. That is real skill, right? Because fuck you levels of money could come in through winning the lottery, right? And you could still be a complete tosser. But fuck you levels of mind, now that is another thing, right? Like that is something to strive for. So to me, I mean, it's an invitation to face fear, but not with in Tai Chi. There's a you know, for example, our movement technique or punching is not ballistic. Typical punching is I give my body a single instruction, and then I launch it forward and hope for the best, right? In Tai Chi, there's a different thing which you could call dynamic thought, which is that at every millimeter of movement, you are feeling and coordinating and applying consciousness so that you become overwhelming in some sense. And that's what I would say is that, okay, so you seek out challenges, fine, but don't try to obliterate them. Merge with them. Feel the fear that they impose on you, and then go into a real exploration of what that fear represents. Why is it there? There is something that you are misunderstanding with that when that fear arises. And if you just work with a ton of grit and determination, and you become this work hard, play hard type that goes like, I will obliterate this obstacle, you've learned nothing from it, right? Like you've learned to obliterate obstacles, but you know, you're like I said, you're punching your way out of fear, as opposed to letting it come in completely and then embracing it so fully that it vanishes, right? So I would rather have that. I would rather be someone who can look at fear and feel it and just see fear dead in the face and merge with it completely and embrace it fully, rather than just trying to sort of macho my way out of situations all the time, because I think that's just like very low level stuff, right? So at any rate, you know, this is a kind of idea about the meaning of life being a mental or a state of consciousness, and your purpose in life is ever seeking challenges that allow you to merge with more and more things and situations, so that that level of consciousness then keeps growing into ever expanding spheres of your life, right? That's kind of what it comes down to. So I hope that makes sense. I hope everybody has a super cool Friday, and I'll be making more videos soon.